Thank you. I'd like to bring up Rob Holmes, who is from Streamr, and Sunny Liu, who is the CEO of VeChain. Now, I'll warn you, we've decided that if you'd like to sit down, that's great, thanks. We have actually decided that we are going to have a little bit of a chat, but we're going to try and get a bit more interactive with you as an audience. So, I may actually get up and start walking in the middle and trying to get some stimulated discussion going on once we've had a bit of a discussion, okay? So, Sunny, why don't you just introduce your organization and what you do? Thanks.
Sure. My name is Sunny. I'm a CEO and a co-founder of VeChain. VeChain is a blockchain startup starting from China and Singapore in the last 4 years. We have been growing up from 5 people to be a little bit more than 100 people across 9 different offices around the world. The funny thing is, before I started the blockchain startups, I used to be working Louis Vuitton as a CIO for China. And I got a question all the time, why people like me making living by selling bags end up with some kind of cutting edge or high technology. The truth is, I was a CIO, so majorly I was acting as a bridge between business and technology. Always think about how the technology can help the business or create value for the business, or the business are looking for some technology to solve the problem, or make the new solutions. So in 2015, when I get to know about the Bitcoin and the blockchain since 2013, but in 2015 I feel like there was a huge gap in the blockchain space, which is one side, most of the people around the world believe blockchain is going to change the world like the internet did in the last 25 or 30 years. In the other hand, we are not able to see many applications really change people's life. So I feel there is a gap there. The gap is most of the technical people in the blockchain space don't have a clue how business runs. And most of the business people are interested about the blockchain technology, don't know how the blockchain works. So my job in my previous life is the answer for that. So I was saying okay, there is a space for me. I got to throw myself into that. So I start there, and in the past 3 and 4 years, we are focused on building up public blockchain platform, VeChain, with user-friendly interfaces to enterprises. I think right now it's quite unique in the blockchain space.
Okay, Rob.
Hi, so I'm Rob Holmes. I work for the partnerships team in Streamr. I joined Streamr just under a year ago, but before that I worked for global civil engineering consultancies, where I worked on lots of road and highways related projects, where I was working on projects that involved roadside sensors, such as environmental sensors that tell you about the condition of the road, whether there's any hazards from severe weather, and then also on smart motorways and projects. So in November 2017 I moved to Streamr, and Streamr is a decentralized platform for the world's IoT devices. And essentially, it consists of 3, there's 2 main components that I want to discuss today, and they are its decentralized peer-to-peer network. So effectively, that is for data delivery from the world's IoT devices, and it consists basically of users who can. So anybody here can become a node in the network. They can offer up their spare bandwidth capacity and use that to transport data from A to B. A being an IoT device, and B potentially being another device or a user who's interested in that data. So
sorry,
that's okay. So we have this decentralized peer-to-peer network, and the users are incentivized for for being part of this network through Streamr's digital currency, which is data coin. So they're rewarded for transporting that data over the network. And then the second main component that's most relevant to today's conversation is our data marketplace. So the data that's transported over the network can be made discoverable through a marketplace. Now, if you can think of a data marketplace a bit like an eBay, but for real-time data streams. So what it basically does is it packages up real-time data streams into what we term data products, and then makes them available to potential buyers. And those buyers could be individuals like data scientists, or could be companies like AI companies, or even automotive companies, for example, or they could be actually machines, so autonomous vehicles directly exchanging information, or even just connected vehicles.
So that's the basically the context of this particular discussion is going to be about mobility and autonomous vehicles, etc. So. What can you give the audience some kind of appreciation of the kind of things that you're working on in that particular space?
So for example, we recently worked on a pilot as part of the Trusted IoT Alliance, where we worked with Bosch, as well as Riddle and Code, where we worked to obtain data from within a Jaguar I-Pace. And we worked to unsilo that data, take it out of the vehicle. Riddle and Code provided a trusted hardware wallet, which enabled us to ensure that we had trusted data coming out of that vehicle. We pulled that from the vehicle and into our data marketplace, and we were able to kind of monetize that, make it available to AI companies to be able to actually start developing some useful insights from that data. So that's one thing that we've been doing recently.
Sonny?
Actually, we have been working on the automobile industry since 2016. Does it work? Okay, actually, we have been working in the automobile industry since 2016, and we have been working with 3 different automobile manufacturers in the past 3 years, representing 3 different stages how enterprise embrace or onboard the blockchain technology. The first one in 2016 was with Renault in Paris. It was very simple POCs, proof of concepts, just try to build up a maintenance book we call Vehicle Passport to collect all of the maintenance log and maintenance data for a car. So it's basically like we treat the car as like a human, as a profile, and we build up the maintenance book there. So when the car owner bring the car to the next maintenance provider, or even the insurance company or second-hand trade markets, people are able to discover the data or access the data very easily to do so. So it was a very simple POCs in 2016. And starting from end of 2017, so we are working with the second automobile companies, BMW. We create the application we call Verified Car for BMW cars, not only about the maintenance, but also about the insurance logs. Even going to the next phase, the car computer is one of the IoT devices in the Beamer, are able to upload the cars to the blockchain, to the cloud, when the car accident happens. So the insurance company are able to justify or make a judgment like, do I need to send someone on site, or it's quick, insurance claim. So it saves a lot of cost for insurance company. So that kind of the use case shows a very interesting, like a stage of how to use the blockchain. No more just one enterprise or one entity play. It's actually 2 different enterprise play together. And when time goes to 2018, we're working with BYD, which is the largest EV company in China. It's kind of like a Chinese Tesla, but not that fancy. We more than just record the data of the car, like a profile, basic data of the car. Actually, we work with the DNVGL, which is the largest certification provider in the world, to transform the driver activity. Like you're driving an EV, electricity vehicle. Actually, this kind of activity can transform to be some kind of value contribute for the CO2 emissions, right? So for example, you drive 100 miles of EV, so the DNVGI provide the transformation from your activity to be kind of the value to contribute to CO2. And also the credits, based on the smart contracts, the smart contract will generate the carbon credits to reward the driver who are doing this kind of activity. And the carbon credits can be used in the different enterprise across multiple different industries. For example, there is a milk company, a dairy company in China. They accept the carbon credits to motivate more drivers, more users to drive EV instead of fossil cars. And also there's one hospital to incentivize the people who contribute to the saving the planet, that kind of activity, by you are not doing like with VIP privilege to see the doctors. You don't need to make a reservation. You can just show the carbon credits, to get the reservation very quickly. So in summary, this is a very interesting ecosystem-oriented application with automobile across different industries as well. Think about that. Before, if an enterprise to say, I want to save the planet, what they do, usually they send a bunch of people in the middle of the desert and plant some trees and doing some PR work, say, I'm saving the planet. But now you are able to say, I really put like $1 million or $2 million a year in exchange with my products or services to motivate, let's say, 25,000 people, even not my clients, to save the planet together. So my point is, the last case with BYD is more than just automobile, but using the DOT, using the blockchain technology and IoTs are able to transform some like a business consensus and to align with lots of different enterprises and organizations to work on the same purpose. So that's really exciting for me. Actually, the next target is not only just the CO2, but all of the SDGs from the United Nations. Actually, as a matter of fact, UNDP is part of the carbon projects we have been working, and we are trying to expand not only the CO2 emission, but also more SDGs like clean water, green world, something like this.
I think it's really interesting. So we've been kind of chatting for about 10 minutes in the area of mobility, and the thing that we're really talking about is kind of data interoperability from both perspectives. I remember back in my dim distant past, I did a deal with Nest to bring them into. They came into Europe, and once we'd signed the deal, they said, "Well, come over to Austin, Texas. There's a meeting of the Thread Alliance." I said, "Well, what's that?" They said, "Well, that's a protocol that allows your Fitbit to work with your thermostat and your garage doors and everything." And I'm like, "Okay, that's interesting. So what about Samsung?" "Oh, no, that's Samsung Smart Things." "Well, what about Apple?" "Well, that's the Apple HomeKit." And I realized that at that IoT level, connected home, it wasn't a connected home, it was a disconnected set of proprietary ecosystems. Isolated. Yeah, and one of the things that I then got attracted to by the Energy Web Foundation was the idea of, for energy systems and maybe mobility systems, the challenge is one of avoiding silos and getting interoperability and decentralized asset registers, for example, working so that we can optimize the system. So in the area of mobility, are you seeing any sort of siloing taking place from a sort of a proprietary perspective? Do you see that?
Well, yeah, actually, I think more than just mobility, but also like for the entire IoT world. Think about IoT. What is IoT, or what IoT is supposed to do? IoT is about a machine talking to machine, or machine doing business with machine, right? So usually think about how to do a business between two machines. You usually go to 3 different steps. Firstly, you need to build up the common protocol between different manufacturer devices. Cisco device want to talk to, Samsung or talk to other manufacturers. So you need a kind of protocol. So that's like NB-IoT Luna, that kind of protocol works. And the second step, like you mentioned, you need to identify each other. But right now, honestly, the identity of the device, especially IoT device, is quite in a silo database. It's owned by the different manufacturers. So in the reality now, is Cisco device are not able to identify the device from Apple, or the Apple are not able to identify the device from Samsung, something like that. So they really need some kind of unique ID or universal ID across multiple different manufacturers, multiple different category of devices are able to identify each other and talk to each other. So that's the second step. And the third step, when the machine wanted to do the business with another machine, so how are we going to do? You're not going to sign a contract, right? So you can use a smart contract on the blockchain and execute the smart contract with digital assets as the blood inside of the collaboration. So I would say the IoT and blockchain is kind of like bound to each other, that kind of thing, to deal with the isolation problem for this.
Rob, how do you see it?
Well, you can think of it from a perspective of, for example, autonomous vehicles. So in order to train the AI within autonomous vehicles, that it takes hundreds and billions of self-driven miles to actually achieve this. And I think we're still a very long way away from achieving that. And that's partly because a lot of the autonomous vehicle manufacturers at the moment are working alone in solo. So what they're actually doing is that they're doing all of this training of the vehicles, and they're not actually opening up the data to be pulled together with other autonomous vehicle manufacturers. So what someone like Streamr can do is come along and provide the network and the data exchange environment for enabling those autonomous vehicles to share that data. And if they do share that data, pool it together, it's to the benefit of all of the manufacturers. And actually, we can then start to see, for example, autonomous vehicles on our roads a lot sooner than potentially the current timeline, which I think, according to some predictions from Highways England, is we're looking at around 2050 for autonomous vehicles being really mainstream on our roads.
Yeah. So you've heard something around, data interoperability. You've heard things around sort of digital identities and identities of devices and the ability to share those. Do you want to get in on the conversation? Is there anything that that's kind of itching that you want to talk about? Anything? Sorry, I'll grab you first and then yourself. I'm going to walk. That's all right. I don't know. I'll get dynamic.
While you are talking about IoT devices that have to communicate, I would like to talk more about data. This means the data, they should communicate each to another one and use the data to reach your objective. The question is, there's not much technology inside. Instead, you should be more thinking about data.
Okay, that's one question. I'll get you to go for it.
You brought up the point about that it's going to take 2050 until we start seeing these autonomous vehicles. But what about simulation as a means to speed up the time of miles that need to be produced and there's companies that are now doing that. So how are you all managing, or what do you see that being the case?
Okay, brilliant panel. So we've got a question about why you're obsessed about devices and not concentrating so much on data, and then we've got a thing about simulation, which I think is about teaching the algorithms to be able to get there. What have you got to say about that?
I can answer for the question for this gentleman. Okay, so where data comes from? Data is coming from people's activity, coming from the business operations, right? But who is going to generate the data, or what is a carrier for this data? I would say more and more it will be the IoT devices. So IoT device is more like a touching point to allow the system able to connect to the real world and able to collect the data. So it's like a hands on the eyes. So it's the first touching point. I can tell a very interesting story. A couple of years ago, we started to work with the DNVGO, who is providing the business assurance services to their clients along, the multiple national companies. So before, what they do is they send the people to their clients, to the manufacturer, to the supply chain, to audit and to inspect, like if your process is running as they require. So they are able to provide you the certifications. But now the clients should start to say, you don't have to send the people to me. because everything is running with the system. Everything is running with the machine. So what I can do is just provide you the data, and you can, based on what I provide to you, you can provide me the certification. You can modify, you can monitor, you can supervise my supply chain processes. But what they do is they need to collect the data from the IoT devices, because that's the endpoint. Well, I think for both, not only the historical data, but also the new data coming. Even the historical data is coming from, let's say, before, without IoT, the historical data is actually generated by the human input. And more, the data is coming from IoT devices to minimize the impact of about a human fault or like human errors. It become more and more trusted.
Rob, what about yourself? And maybe this thing around
Simulation.
Yeah,
so we haven't really had many conversations with automotive companies about simulation as a sense. I mean, we've been more focused around trying to get the message across around opening up their data, so the self-driven data for sharing that in this ecosystem. So it's not really something that I've been having or we have been having much conversations on. So it's probably not something I can quite answer, other than to say that we're really just focused on trying to create this this attitude of unsiloing data and making it available to create this collaborative economy almost. Where
do you have a point of view to throw into the room, or is it just a general question?
You know, as this is focused on AI, there's a lot of work being done in AI around simulation to speed up the process. And so there's companies out of Switzerland that are working on that, as I know, that are really driving, you know, these self-driving cars forward at a much faster rate, hopefully, than 2050.
Driving them forward, there's always like a language that goes with it, isn't there? Has anybody else got anything they want to say? Or
yeah, I think the difficulty with simulation is that sort of last ninth. You know, you can simulate a lot, but it's the things that happen in the real world that we can't think of, that companies like Tesla are collecting from their real world shadow mode that we don't know about. It's the unknown unknowns, if you like, and they're impossible to simulate until we know about them. So simulation can only go so far, I think. I don't know whether you guys want to comment on that.
Yeah, we'll just we'll close it up. But if you guys want to comment on what was just mentioned.
Actually, I got some comment about that. The simulation, so how AI works, actually, I'm not AI expert, but I know that AI based on two fundamental things. One is the algorithm, but algorithm is really, different based on the different scenarios, use cases. Like in the autonomous drive, it will be one algorithm. The other thing is about massive data, like tons of data. So that's how simulation should work, to feed the system with as much as we can the data. So the system or the AI engines are able to make the right judgment like a human to drive, right? So I would say right now, the thing is about the simulation is like how you're gonna generate the data is only simulated by the machine, by the system, or really like using the practical actual data when it's driving. That's what Tesla has been doing. Tesla is collecting the data from the users and feed it to the AI system and to make the autonomous drive more and more secure. But the thing is, how do you motivate? Because right now you don't have a choice. If you drive Tesla, you don't have a choice. The data is uploading there. You have to click agree with some kind of privacy agreement or something. But how in the future we can think about how we can motivate the user to do so. For example, if we can convert the driving data to be some kind of carbon or carbon emission reduction, that kind of credits, and to incentivize the user, and the user will say, I'm driving, let's say, 10,000 miles of Tesla, I'm saving the planet. That kind of rewards, even just the proof to the world. It's like I'm an environmental protectist, something like this. So I always say the simulation is more like how to motivate an individual person to do so together.
Yeah. Rob? closing remark?
I think you answered that well enough there. I think Sonny. I don't think I could add anything
Brilliant.
to that.
Okay,
line
thanks,
there.
Rob, Sonny. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much, and
Thank you very
thanks
much.
for getting involved.